second worst record in basketball, one of the worst teams in the NBA, first year head coach, bunch of young guys, but it's good sometimes to be bad. And now you have the number one pick. And now you're in a position where it feels like that the Magic have a really nice young roster, right? Franz Wagner, successful as a rookie. Jalen Suggs last year, up and down, but it's still early. You still feel encouraged about him, among others on the roster. Now there's an opportunity with the number one pick to add someone who could be a franchise changer, to bring you back to the postseason with consistency like past number one picks by the Magic. Ceruti, who is your preference at number one for Orlando as a fan?
I've been Team Chet for a while, since basically they got the pick. I like Chet even going back to Gonzaga. I understand there's like the weirdness of the body thing, but I've asked a couple guys about this. I'm interested in what you think, KOC, but like if he had like a couple inches wider shoulders, or he had 10 to 15 more pounds on him, like, are we even having a discussion about this? And, I just think he does so many different things. And I'm to the point too, where if they took Jabari, and I still kind of think Jabari, he's definitely the betting favorite. And I'd still probably say he's the guy they're going to take if I had to pick right now. And I wouldn't be bummed with that. But I just kind of feel like if you have the number one pick, I wouldn't play it. I wouldn't play it safe, especially in this draft. Like, I think Chet is the generational guy in this draft. Sure, he has more bust potential than maybe, of the other two top two guys. I mean, Paolo, who knows? He's almost like he's not even in this discussion, which is kind of strange because a lot of people still think he's the best player in the draft. But I just like all of the weird things that Chet does. And maybe I'll be proved horrifically wrong in 5 years or so, but I'm not that worried about the body. He's incredibly tough. He is a guy who has a great competitive spirit. He doesn't back down from challenges. He basically takes on any single role that's thrown at him and is happy to do that. So this whole thing about like he's frail and too small, I mean, sure, his body frame is a little bit weird. He kind of has the hunchback situation, but his game is so versatile and he has the right attitude to kind of attack and overcome those deficiencies that I'm less scared about it. So I'm Team Chet, and I've been Team Chet since basically day one.
And Kev, are you also Team Chet?
Yeah, so I came around this morning. I started watching... This morning. So I started watching some film seriously in the last, let's say, 24 hours, because I'm doing this pod, a couple other podcasts. And so I just wanted to say, let's just lock this in, because I've done a couple of hits in the past where I've said, well, I can see both sides. My Jabari hesitation was that he played the college that I went to, University of Miami, in the tournament, and he disappeared. And he got bullied by a bunch of guys who are going to be playing in Turkey in 2 years. I love that team, but like, I'm not seeing a lot of lottery picks on there. And it felt like as soon as they went at Jabari stopped asserting himself. I sent a text to Ceruti and Russillo this morning, and I was like, can you guys just send me like a couple games where Jabari, I'm going to use the phrase, had that dog in him? I'm on dog watch. I'm looking for a little dog. And Russillo gave me a couple of things, but I didn't see enough to where it differentiates between Chet and him. If Jabari, and Bill has talked about Jabari's competitiveness, I'm sure it's there, but it's not enough for me to overlook what Chet brings. The defensive floor is extremely high. The blocks, the instincts, the timing, the rhythm. The only real weakness is perimeter defense, which, I mean, I think that's just always going to be a problem if you're that big. And it wasn't a complete disaster. He could hold guys up, but he moves smoothly. He didn't get put on skates in the pick and roll, and the offense was good enough. So I'm with Ceruti. The whole point of this, I'm tired of B+ guys. I'm tired of B- guys. Mm-hmm. The whole point of this, the only way as a franchise that we get out of the last decade is a Giannis level superstar who changes the entire culture. Now that roster is ready if we get an absolute superstar, because there's a lot of, as I said, B-level players, role players. The roster has been for a few years role players in search of a superstar. And I understand the concerns about the frame, but he's going to get bigger. He's that's just how life works. Like, he's not going to be 195 pounds forever. Get him in an NBA weight room. He's got the instincts. I just love Chet.
So it seems like you guys, after years of mediocrity, you just want to draft for the upside. Like you like Jabari Smith is more of the high floor player in the sense that 6'10", he's definitely going to be a shot maker. Like, there's no doubt about his 3-point shooting ability. That's undeniable. He can do a little bit, 1 or 2 dribble, 3-pointers off the dribble. Not going to be a guy who's breaking down defenses, attacking the basket, drawing fouls yet. At least he's not a playmaker yet. defensively, that dude's versatile. He can, help at the rim, defends on the perimeter at a high level, switchable. Like all of those things are important. That gives him a floor. But I think with Chet, what you guys are saying is that Chet is somebody who he is an anchor of your defense. Mm-hmm. He can be one of your key forces on defense as a rim protector and help, or as one of the primary, as the 5. And on offense, lob threat, 3-point shooter. He can pass better than he was able to show at Gonzaga because of his limited role there.
Yeah.
And how much of that, though, also has to do with the existing pieces on your roster? Because with Wagner, everything I said about Jabari Smith kind of applies to Franz Wagner. And you have, Suggs as a guard and Fultz as a guard. How much does it have to do with that?
Well, I also want to make one part of his game. Jay Chapman at the Magic Radio Network had one of the Gonzaga beat writers on the other day, and they said the Chet's mid-range game wasn't able to be shown at all at Gonzaga, and he's got it. And they said, listen, we're not comparing him to Kevin Durant, but there's an upside there where he can make shots at every level of the floor, and you need to be aware of that going into the NBA. That's part of his game that we haven't necessarily seen.
He wasn't allowed to show it. He wasn't able to.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But it's there. And so, Ceruti, I think we need to go back and forth on this because it's a roster question. Because I've heard people say, all right, if you want to build around Markelle Fultz as your point guard, he can't shoot, or he's not a consistent shooter. So you got to have a shooter somewhere, and maybe that's Jabari. Jabari, could be the new age, extremely rich man's Rashard Lewis, right? And listen, I'll fall for any Rashard Lewis comp. I've seen them out there, but that's not even enough to convince me yet. But I think that when you go kind of in search of a superstar, I don't really think you can worry about any of the other pieces, Ceruti. I don't know if I'm wrong or you disagree. Like, I'm not sitting here saying like, we can't do this because we need to pair with this guy. Like, I just want the highest ceiling possible. And so I actually don't care that much about the current roster. I love the idea of a mini big 3 of Franz, Chet, and Wendell. That sounds great to me, but I'm not making a pick based on that.
I agree. Like, if you were to tell me, hey, the Magic take Jabari, he slots in perfectly. He's actually a perfect fit for the Magic. And, because they desperately need 3-point shooting. I think they were they were definitely bottom, 5 in 3-point shooting last year. Their guards don't shoot. So they need basically shooting from everywhere else on the court. And if you're going to bring in a power forward who's, from college hitting 42% from 3, then obviously that's a natural fit. I think they have, and this is the dilemma, because the Magic do have playmaking. I mean, I think Franz is a playmaker. I'd like to see the ball in his hands more next season. They didn't do that a ton. I kind of wish they did it more at the end of the season when they didn't really have anything to play for. And they didn't, but that's when they got Fultz back, and Fultz is their primary playmaker. And we want to joke about Fultz and the shooting and number 1 pick and how, he went over Tatum and all that stuff with the Sixers and the Celtics trade. That's fine. Fultz is a good player. Like, he just is
very good.
And the Magic are significantly better when he's on the court. Every player on the Magic is significantly better when he is in the court. So you can sit here and tell me, all right, yeah, you take Jabari because you actually don't need him to play make. Mm-hmm. So there are some thoughts there. We go when it's a team building thing to say, hey, we actually don't need. Jabari's like playmaking and his dribbling. If he could develop that in 3-4 years, 5 years, that's great. But we actually don't need him to do that from day one on this roster. Like, you could sell me on that. I'm okay with that. But I'm kind of going back to your point, Kev. Like, if you have the first pick and you have a chance to take a guy who could potentially be generational. Like the main thing for me on the Chet versus Jabari thing is, how bummed would you be? I personally would be so bummed if in 5 years, Chet is this incredible unicorn player, and he's so fun, and he's like a top 5 league pass guy, and you passed on him because you took a guy who is a really good perimeter shooter and a good defender, who was a safer pick at the time. And sure, there's obviously downside. Chet could certainly bust out. Although I think there's too much talk about his body. I said that when in kind of the opening rant that I had there. How many guys in the league now, KOC, how many guys in the league physically, like when they get into the league, especially big guys, just get bullied out of the league to the point where they can't play, like a Sean Bradley type or somebody like that? It doesn't happen. I don't think it happens anymore.
It doesn't happen in today's league. Even Alexei Pokusevski, that's probably the closest comparable. And despite his struggles for the Thunder, he still has gotten better. Like the second half of this past season for OKC, it was really the first time, instead of him being a meme on the basketball court, it's like, oh yeah, it's starting to come together a little bit. And he's still super skinny. It doesn't make a difference. Like the NBA, I thought Bill Simmons, like he had a great comparison for Chet Holmgren, calling him weird body Al Horford. It's just like, a guy like that, yes, he has a funky body, but ultimately in today's NBA, it allows for strange body types to thrive. in today's game. It's positionless. It doesn't make a difference, I don't believe.
And he's still he's still a good athlete too. That's the thing. He does like the perimeter defending thing is
and
a
he
problem,
hustles.
but he moves.
He plays hard. He's tough.
Totally. And he's not afraid. I mean, the quote about him, asking him like, who's the best player in the NBA and him saying me in 2 months. I love that.